It's an absolutely gorgeous day out here in Cheshire today. I woke up this morning and there was like 5 inches of snow on the ground. Just look at that, it's amazing. But I'm still on this feeling thing, and I'm trying to figure out, well, not figure out really, I think it's probably worth spending a few minutes just thinking about why this word feeling is important, as opposed to, and this is something that Gary suggested, as opposed to a word like sense. Why am I using the word feeling to talk about the feeling of meaning, the feeling of knowing, all those kind of stuff, the role that emotions play within thought? Why am I using the word feeling as opposed to sense? It's a really good question, actually. I mean, partly I'm using it just because that's the word that's used in the books that I'm reading. So in a sense, I'm just picking up on the language that's already there. But I think there is a better reason, actually. I think it's worth kicking around some ideas. First, just to establish what I mean, the word feeling, if I can go back to kind of first principles, has two overlapping meanings here. One is where it refers to emotions, or more accurately, the perception of emotions. So you have feelings, and those are there's certain grand ones that have got names, things like anger and joy and happiness and envy and those kind of things. But there's also a whole slew of emotional experiences that we're having all the time, at least. So Antonio Damasio says that every waking experience is an emotional experience. It's just so fine-grained into the fabric of our lives that we don't recognise it. All these little tiny value judgments are being made about our experience the whole time, and the summation of that is the general feeling tone that we have. So that's the one meaning of feeling, which is about, as I say, emotions. And then there's this other word, feeling, which refers to a very particular sensory modality. Because if I'm talking about emotions, why don't I say the sound of emotions? Or why don't I say the taste of the world? Or why don't I describe my emotional engagement with the world in terms of its flavour, or its sensory modalities, or its smell? Why don't I use those things? Why do I use this word feeling? Because after all, feeling is one of the 5 or 6 senses, depending on how you feel about those things. It's what happens. Feeling is the word that, it's that, it's a very particular sensory modality about the nerve endings in your skin responding to certain characteristics of the environment. The texture of things, the temperature of things, the shape of things, possibly even the sharpness of things. It's picking up on those sensations, whether something's vibrating or whether it's static, whether something's cold or hot. What else do you get? Kind of prickliness or furriness, those kind of sensations. That's what the word feeling usually refers to. It's this. It's the sensory response that happens at the surface of your skin, particularly your hands, I think, because I think feeling, as opposed to being felt, is an active thing. Or it feels to me like it's active. It feels like it's something that your hands primarily are engaged in. Although generally, I think it's slightly more generally, it is about the skin. So why do we use feeling? Or why that word? Why is that sensory modality more relevant when talking about your emotional engagement with the world? I suppose my vote would go for the idea that it's the one that's closest to marking a kind of boundary condition. Because I'm looking out into this world, and obviously I'm enjoying what I'm looking at, because all the trees are covered in this white stuff. It's fantastic. And my seeing feels like it's happening out there in the world. I mean, I know it's me that's doing it and all that kind of mechanics of it. But the things I see are out there in the world. They're at some distance from me. And, they're not pushing against me. They're not necessarily threatening me right now in an immediate way. So my seeing happens out there. My hearing happens out there as well. I can just about, well, actually, I can hear cars kind of trying to drag through the snow on the bypass. I can't see them, but I can hear them. So that's happening out there as well. Conversely, things like taste, I've got a slight metallic taste in my mouth right now, for example. Yeah, I can still kind of taste some of the toast crumbs that I had just before I left the house. A slice of toast I had before I left the house. So that's happening, so I can sense that. But that's happening inside the boundaries of where I draw myself, really. And similarly with smell, I think. I can't smell doodly squat today. I've got a bit of a cold, and it's really cold anyway, so I'm not going to smell much. But when I do smell things, again, that seems to happen inside myself, or inside that boundary. Whereas I think feeling, the sense of touch, what we call feeling, in the most practical way, happens at the surface, and in a way marks out the surface. If I couldn't feel anything, if I didn't have hands, if that whole sensory modality was shut down, I'm not really sure I'd know where the boundaries of myself began and end. I think I probably wouldn't have a bloody clue, because I wouldn't have that information. So feeling seems to be quite important in terms of demarcating boundaries. So why are they important in terms of emotions? Okay, I suppose if I'm using it kind of metaphorically, I don't think it's exactly a metaphor, but if myself and pretty much everybody else uses this word feeling to indicate emotion, emotional engagement with the world or memory or whatever, then I guess what you're trying to suggest by that metaphor is the meeting point, the interface between those parts of yourself that are notionally interior, or just separate from the world, felt to be separate from the world, and those parts that aren't. So you have emotional responses to something. So there's something having an emotional response to some other thing, and one of those parts is interior and private and subjective, and that other part is exterior and public and intersubjective. So that, I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I guess all I'm saying is that I get the word feeling is possibly used to describe emotional states, because in terms of all the sensory modalities, that's the one which, in metaphorical terms, best describes the point at which outside, inside, self, other, world, being, live experience and memory, all those kind of things meet, almost like the like the ground hitting your feet as you walk, or the air hitting your skin as you wave your arm around.